Identity, it's a huge thing for me now, and just where we get that. And I would put my identity in a lot of different things throughout my life. I would say coming in to Corbin, my identity was I play soccer. There's just a lot of struggles and ups and downs that come with putting your identity in something like that. My identity, if I'm putting it into soccer, for example, my freshman year, I didn't really play. So if you're kind of basing yourself off of results or something external like that, then that dictates your value. That dictates how you feel about yourself. Because if I'm putting my value in soccer and like what I'm getting from soccer or what I'm doing in soccer, as soon as that goes down or goes up, that dictates how I'm viewing myself and how I feel about myself. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of ups and downs with that. And I would say the downs they're pretty low, especially if things aren't going well. And just like in the real world and just in reality, everything isn't great all the time.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another Stories with Richi, and today we have our special guest, Nate Sherwood. Welcome, Nate.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Heck yeah, it's finally, it was about time. So who is Nate Sherwood?
Well, I first see myself as a child of God. I currently go to Corbin University, getting my getting my master's in counseling. And I play for the men's soccer team. And so that's what I've been up to a lot lately. And yeah.
It's cool. So you're a Christian, right? Mm-hmm. So how did you come to know the Lord?
Well, that's an interesting story. Growing up, my parents and my aunt, who homeschooled me, helped me be aware of God and Jesus. And so they didn't really practice it, but I knew about it. And so I knew about it through them. I would go to church. My mom's side is Catholic, so I would go to church on Christmas and Easter, and so I would learn about God there. When I was in middle school, I went to a private Christian school, and that helped me learn a lot more about God. And then that's kind of just it for my youth. That's all. It was just something that I accepted and that I knew about, but it wasn't really much of my life.
Okay. So when did you have like a change, like an encounter with the Lord?
See, that's interesting because when I hear about other people's stories and about how they came to God, a lot of them have a specific moment or a specific hard time in their life. And for me, it felt very gradual, just very slow. Specifically, once I came to Corbin, it felt very slow. And so I don't really have a specific encounter or a specific narrowed down time in my life. Mm-hmm. Besides, once I started coming to Corbin is when it slowly started happening for me.
Okay. So you play soccer here. Mm-hmm. Tell me about your experience. When did you start playing soccer?
I started playing soccer when I was 4. Okay. And it's been an amazing journey of soccer in that career since then. I started playing rec soccer, and I was so small. The grass was up to my knees. I was the worst player on the field. I didn't score for 2 years. And then I just slowly moved up. And then I came here.
Came to Corbin? Mm-hmm. And how was it to get the opportunity to play here? Like, was that challenging? How were you able to navigate through that?
Coming here at first was interesting because of the level of play. It was a lot different. I would say the speed was higher, and the physicality was beyond what I was ready for.
Really?
Yeah. I was 110 pounds, 105 pounds. I was not prepared. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and what was your teammate reactions to your experience?
They thought I was the coach's son when I arrived to camp. Yeah, it was hilarious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do they have like a nickname for you?
No, I don't think so. Okay. Not that I remember. Yeah.
And how were you able to overcome that, struggling, with the physicality of the game? How were you able to overcome that?
I almost made an identity of myself through the sport and what I was good at in the sport. I had very good foot skills, and so that part of my game was very high. I came from playing professional I was playing futsal for the national team. It's like indoor soccer.
Okay.
On a basketball court, kind of. It's 5 versus 5. And I was playing for the under 18s men's national team.
Wow.
And so I went to Colombia and I went to Costa Rica. And so I had that part of me, and I kind of was like, oh, foot skills, very good technically on the ball. And so that's what kind of helped me in that time. But that didn't last for very long. And I just slowly started getting acquainted with the team and just my role in the team.
So you say you made that kind of your skills part of your identity. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, yeah, identity. It's a huge thing for me now, and just where we get that. And I would put my identity in a lot of different things throughout my life. So I would say coming in to Corbin, my identity was I play soccer.
Okay.
And so there's just a lot of struggles and ups and downs that come with putting your identity in something like that.
How did that affect you?
Well, my identity, if I'm putting it into soccer, for example, my freshman year, I didn't really play. So if you're kind of basing yourself off of results or something external like that, then that dictates your value. That dictates how you feel about yourself. Because if I'm putting my value in soccer and like what I'm getting from soccer or what I'm doing in soccer, as soon as that goes down or goes up, that dictates how I'm viewing myself and how I feel about myself. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of ups and downs with that. And I would say the downs they're pretty low, especially if things aren't going well. And just like in the real world and just in reality, everything isn't great all the time.
So how did you feel during that time? Soccer was your thing, and you weren't able to play. How did you feel during that time?
Oh, I felt purposeless. I felt invaluable, and really, I didn't feel good, and I just didn't want to feel that.
And so, what was your take on that? Like, what did you learn from that experience?
Well, that kind of just starts my journey in terms of where I put my identity. And so, for example, putting my identity in soccer and it not working out, my value just being dictated by that, it didn't feel good. And so anytime I didn't feel good, I would try to feel better. And so that would just create a whole other cycle of things.
Like what?
Well, similarly to putting your identity into something like that, you almost dictate your happiness based off that. And so soccer, putting my identity in soccer isn't really doing what I want it to do. I'm not feeling good because of soccer. Let me feel good because of something else. Or let me find something else to help me feel good.
What did you use during that time?
Well, I used video games. I used relationships. I used a lot of, honestly, unhealthy things that really just spiraled me downwards. And this could kind of trace back to me, like when I'm younger. It all started there for me. Okay, so let's say I think I'm 7. This is when my parents got divorced when I was 7. And so that created a lot of sadness and depression. But I didn't know what to do with that. So I would kind of just try to mask it. I would go and I would play video games. Or I would go and I would try to play soccer as much as possible. I would go out and play with my friends. And so that would work. I would be distracted. And so, but it's all temporary. It wouldn't really get me anywhere, and I would just keep looking for that and looking for that. And in high school, like, I had my identity in being a high school soccer player. I had my identity in trying to find relationships that would fill me. And like my sexuality, for example, I looked to sexual immorality to make me feel better, because things like that are very stimulating, and I would feel distracted and I would feel pleasure. And so I think things like that is what I'm talking about in terms of like looking to other things to help me feel good. But
how were you able to overcome that?
That kind of starts with my journey at Corbin. Going into my freshman and sophomore year of college, more of like through my whole freshman year and then the first half of sophomore year, is when I kind of realized, like, okay, everything that I've done up to this point to help me feel good, to grow, to
probably cover the pain that we were experiencing.
Yeah, to cover the pain, to cover feeling empty, just in general wanting to feel good. Everything that I've done up to that point, it just hasn't worked. And I need something new. And I think in that point of time is when things started to change, because I was like really aware about, okay, what has worked for me, what hasn't worked for me. I need to start looking for something. And I think that's what God used in me to draw him closer to him, but it didn't register like that for me at that point. I didn't really know that. And so, for example, I used soccer with identity. I used that to help me feel valuable. I used video games to help me escape.
How many hours do you play of video games?
Now?
In the past?
In the past, especially in high school, it could be upwards of 2 to 7 hours a day.
Wow.
It was a lot. Yeah. So I would struggle with that, and really anything that helped me not feel nothing or not feel sad. So soccer did that, and there was a lot of healthy ways that soccer did that, and some unhealthy ways. Video games did that. My sexual immorality, and to be more specific, it would be pornography or talking to women so that I could feel value from that. Things like that is what I would look to help me feel good, to not feel nothing, and to feel valuable. And so up till my late freshman year and early sophomore year, I was realizing, like, all of those things, it's not getting me to where I want to be. And that's when I started getting a lot more self-reflection, and I was like, what is going on? Why am I so down? Why do I feel invaluable? What do I need? And so I started doing research, and that's just kind of where the growth started happening towards God. And it's amazing, because that's what felt very gradual. There wasn't like a moment.
Okay, that makes more sense now. And I'm very curious about how you mentioned pornography, because it is something that a lot of young men struggle in this generation. This is something that it's sadly available at any time in their phones. And I wonder, like, if you had the opportunity to tell them about your experience, what would you tell them right now?
Experience with pornography?
Yes.
I could talk about this for a very long time. I've put a lot of research into this, and time and effort into my growth away from that.
For example, why they shouldn't do that?
Okay. Well, for me, the biggest part of why we shouldn't do that is because in the Bible, it says flee from sexual immorality, and I forgot what side or what verse. Yeah. But to be honest, if I heard that when I was doing it, it wouldn't have really done much for me. And so
you needed more.
I needed more. And so at the time, I believed in God, and this is how I was throughout all of my life. But I needed something that helped me really be able to have the vision of, like, okay, this is why this is bad. And I think what I started coming across before I was really close to God, and before I had faith a strong faith and was just like, okay, this is what God says. This is what I will do. And this is why I should follow it. And this comes way later, maybe for a little bit of clarity. What brought me close to God is all of the research that I was doing that was saying, hey, this is good for you. It all ended up being what God had already said for us to do or not to do. So, like, I ended up through all of my effort and research to grow as a person and, like, to see what is healthy for me. God had already said that. And so that's what ended up bringing my faith and just, like, strengthening my faith.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that at the time when I was struggling with that. I just knew that, hey, I don't feel good. What's going on? And so for the issue with pornography, like you said, it's so many men, a high percentage of men struggle with it. And I've been lucky to have been free from that for over 2 years. I think it was towards the end of COVID year.
Okay. What changed?
Yeah. What changed was, like I said, I just overall was feeling invaluable. I was feeling low. And I was just constantly looking for things to help me feel good. But it just wasn't working. And so I looked for things, and I looked to change. And so I helped for pornography. I looked at why it wouldn't be healthy, and there's so many reasons. But
can you tell me at least 2 reasons?
Sure. Pornography is an extremely stimulating occurrence. It fires, helps your dopamine system. It fires all of your dopamine receptors. I forgot the terminology, but basically dopamine is the hormone that helps you feel pleasure. It also is the hormone that helps you feel motivation and drive. And when you are stimulating yourself with pornography, it is so stimulating that it almost fries those receptors to where, because you're stimulating it so intensely through pornography, that the rest of the things that are supposed to help you feel pleasure, help you feel motivation, help you feel drive, your brain doesn't really receive those very well. And so that kind of started with that. And so there's one part of it. When you're stimulating yourself with pornography, the rest of life isn't very stimulating. You don't feel good, you don't feel pleasure from the little things that God gave you to feel good and feel pleasure. And there's one side of things. And then there's the other side of shame and confidence. When you're doing something that just doesn't feel right, and you just kind of bottled it up inside, that's going to help you not feel valuable, not feel confident. And for example, when you're talking to women and you are having conversation, it's a lot harder for a man to be genuine when they are almost using women in pornography and objectifying women. And so when you're actually relating on a human level, on a relational level, it's less genuine, you're less confident because of the things that you are surrounding yourself in your off time. It bleeds into the rest of your life.
Wow. Something that, at the correctional facility while I was working there, some young guys, they had a perspective on, they have never had someone who challenged them, and they didn't understand how that business works. And sadly, some women are being abused from the human sex trafficking that it's happening behind the scenes that we don't know. So even while you're watching this to make yourself happy or excited, you're contributing to these people who are making business out of these people.
Yeah.
So you're supporting, sadly, a horrific, sad business. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
So what changed? So you said 2020, something changed here.
That was COVID, right?
That was COVID.
Towards the end of summer year. COVID year, summer. What changed was I slowly started to look for ways to grow and reasons why that wouldn't be good, because I realized, oh, okay, this isn't healthy for me. And so it started with, okay, how can I make things in life feel better? How can I be more confident of a person? How can I treat others well? And it started with that. And all of the research and people that I would listen to, they were all secular. So it was all like, if you stop watching pornography, you're going to be more confident. You're going to feel more pleasure from life. You're going to be able to talk to women. You're going to be able to carry yourself as a man. You're going to feel more motivation and drive to go to the gym, to grow. And so it started there.
Sounds that your resources from, secular people were helpful for you to start changing your bad habits. Okay.
At the beginning, yes, it was extremely helpful, and I'm so grateful for that. And then there was a point to where I was like, okay, this helped me this much. What else is going to help me? And then there was a time when I came to watch this pastor. His name is Ben Stewart.
Ben Stewart.
He has books. I think it's a book, but he also has a YouTube series. It's called Single, Dating, Engaged, and Married. And I watched this. And at the time of watching this, I was also taking psychology classes. I took a class called Psychology of Addiction. And so these kind of came hand in hand. And so there was a lot of reflection and processing within this time of my life, but I'll try to make it more concise. I realized that what I do want from my life that will help me feel more fulfilled is I want a solid marriage. I want a solid relationship. And growing up, seeing my parents divorce and also just seeing a lot of failed relationships and having a lot of failed relationships on my own, I was like, yeah, I know that I want to be fulfilled through a solid marriage. And later I'll realize, like, oh, I won't even be able to be fulfilled just from a marriage. But at this point, this is what was helping me grow. And so I listened to Ben Stewart, and I also had different books in my Psychology of Addictions class, because at that point, I had struggled with pornography, and at this point, this is when I'm kind of coming away from that addiction. I read books, and one of them was The Fight of Our Lives, and it was about men who are struggling with pornography and why it's such a struggle. And I also listened to Ben Stewart. And so to start, Ben Stewart was talking about basically how you can be a child of God and glorify God through your singleness, through your dating, and through your being engaged in
marriage
while you're in marriage. And it was just interesting because the perspective that he had on dating was that the whole point of dating is intentional to be married, and when you're married, you want your dating to, how do I put this, set you up for success in marriage, and that goes with how you evaluate, how you choose your partner.
Okay.
And so for the sexual immorality side that I was struggling with, this helped me because it was like, oh, this is why when you're dating, you must, or it is helpful for you to not engage in physicality,
yes.
Putting up sexual boundaries.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it's really hard to summarize all of this to what we're talking about because there's just so many different thoughts coming in. But yeah, Ben Stewart helped talk about sexual boundaries and how sexuality with another person creates a bond, connection. But that can be very hard when you're trying to figure out if you're supposed to be with someone with the rest of your life. And so if dating is a phase in which you're evaluating if you want to spend the rest of your life with somebody, then clouding your judgment with a lack of physical boundaries, because sex and sexuality creates a hormone in your body called oxytocin, which is a bonding hormone. And so if you're evaluating somebody to see if you want to spend the rest of your life with somebody, but you're already bonding with them in a way that clouds your judgment to see if you should bond with somebody for the rest of your life, then that just creates a lot of difficulty. And that's why dating can be very hard just in our world today, because it's very normal to not have sexual boundaries before marriage. And so that contributes also to addiction to sex and pornography that men have, and women, but it's a lot, mostly men.
But it happens for both.
Yeah, and so hearing that, seeing how sexual immorality also basically messes up with your evaluation and your ability to bond well, goes into why pornography is so addictive. And this is what I was reading in my Psychology of Addiction. And it stems from a lack of intimacy. And just realizing how pornography is so enticing, because like sex is created as something that bonds people, and that's why it's so stimulating. But to engage in that in a way that is on a screen and that is not real, and not with somebody who you have had that promise to be with the rest of your life, it like I said, it's addicting because of the stimulation, but also it destroys your ability to bond with somebody. And it creates lust after sex. And sex is supposed to be something that bonds two people, but when you view it as something to stimulate you, then that is going to wreck your idea of what true intimacy is. And so giving yourself up and wasting your intimate energy on something like that is going to just make life a lot harder on you. And so I think having the goal of having a fulfilled marriage and seeing what Ben Stewart had to say about what it takes to kind of choose like a good partner for marriage, and then also what it looks like in marriage, connecting that with the ways that pornography hinders your ability to have good intimacy with somebody. Those helped me move forward in my journey, and those set in stone and are the reasons why I felt the motivation and drive to completely refrain from it.
Sounds like the way you mentioned how how it affect you, your parents' divorce, you use video games, sexual immorality, stuff that you watched. It all affected you, and it kept affecting you even though when you came to college. But once you came to college, you were able to realize, okay, I want something different, and you had the opportunity to get enough resources to change your perspective in life. So it makes me happy that you found that, because a lot of young men, they haven't found that. And my question to you right now is, what would be your advice to all of them who are listening and watching to you right now on pornography? Like, why do you think they should stop doing that or ask for help?
I believe you should ask for help because it's hard to see exactly how much it is affecting your life when it is affecting your life. And it's hard to bring about internal drive right away to be able to stop with that. And the life without pornography is so amazing, and it's so much more fulfilling, and just more, it's just more pleasurable, and you just have a lot more purpose, and it's harder to get there to that spot in your life without help, and just being open about it, and kind of tackling the stigma that is surrounding it. You can just help yourself grow to a better spot of your life.
What about the identity part? What where they should be putting their identity in life?
Well, as a Christian, I believe that you should be putting your identity in Christ, and in God, your Creator, because Christ and God, they are forever, and they are never going to fail you. Putting your identity in things like yourself, another person, a sport, something that gives you happiness, all of those things, they don't last. They're not always good. They fail you. And putting value in something like that will inevitably end up in a low. But God is always good. God is always loving. God is always there. And so if you put your identity in him, he will not fail you. And it's hard because a lot of my family and a lot of me would relate a lot of negative things to God because of pain that's happened in relation to God, in relation to religion. But something that helped me is knowing that I can put my identity in God, and anything that I feel like is not good about God has come from people who always fail, who always have bad perspectives. And so just being able to put my identity in God and my value in God and my faith in God through knowing about how good he is and knowing about how faithful he is, that is what gives me strength and hope in the hardest of times. And I can't say that it was always like that for me, but I am just so grateful for the grace of God that he has gotten me into that point to where I can not need anything else and just have that faith, have that hope that he will endure me through the hard times, and that I can just be grateful for him giving the gifts of the good times.
Amen. So just to finish, Nate, I'm curious, what would be your last advice to young people that are struggling with their identity? They may be struggling with addictions or figuring out what they actually want. What would be your advice to all of them that they feel hopeless?
I would say trying to feel good and trying to put your identity in something that is tangible, that does not last forever, that fails you. It can feel more enticing and feel easier to go to, but it just always ends up in the same difficult spot. And it's not worth it to go through that over and over again just to feel empty again. So put more emphasis on your spirituality, put more emphasis on your beliefs, and if that's God, that is the greatest. But yeah, it's not worth it to look for things of the world and things that are not going to last and things that are going to fail you to feel good. It's not worth it. It'll just continue being in a cycle.
Well, thank you so much, Nate, and we're very thankful to have you here with us today, and we're looking forward to see you in another time. So
thank you for having me, Richi.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Stories with Richi.